A runaway girl hid in his barn. The lonely giant cowboy said, "If they ask, you're my wife now." No headings, no breaks, just a smooth, continuous story in English. The storm rolled across the plains like a wounded animal, howling and tearing at everything in its path. The sky was a restless swirl of bruised clouds, and the late evening wind carried grit, cold, and the distant echo of shouting men. She had been running for hours, barefoot, exhausted, clothes torn, breath breaking, until she finally saw the shape of an old barn sitting at the edge of a lonely ranch. She pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The wood groaned, the air inside heavy with dust and the scent of hay. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared someone outside would hear it. She dropped to her knees behind a stack of hay bales, hugging herself tightly as tears mixed with the dirt on her face. She had nowhere else to go. The barn was her only hope. For a few minutes all she heard was the storm. Then footsteps, heavy, slow, confident. The kind that belonged to a man who didn't fear anything or anyone. The barn door creaked open again. She held her breath. A tall silhouette appeared in the doorway, framed by lightning and wind. Broad shoulders, a cowboy hat dripping rain, boots planted firm on the ground. She squeezed her eyes shut, begging silently that it wasn't one of the men chasing her. A lantern flicked on. "Who's there?" The man's voice rumbled, deep, rough, but strangely calm. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The lantern light swept across the barn and landed on her. He stepped closer, his boots crunching on hay. She shrank back instinctively, curling tighter, expecting yelling, anger, maybe worse. But the giant cowboy simply crouched down in front of her. Despite his size, he looked almost carved out of the mountains. His movements were slow and gentle, as if he was afraid she might break. "You hurt?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, though she clearly was. Fear had become her second skin. "Were you running from someone?" She hesitated, then nodded. He inhaled, long and steady. Thunder cracked outside. "All right," he said softly, setting the lantern down between them. "You're safe here." Nobody had said that to her in years. She couldn't speak. Her throat was tight, dry. Tears pushed forward again, unstoppable. She tried to hide her face, but the cowboy simply lowered his head a little, trying to meet her eyes without forcing her. "My name's Cole," he said. "I live alone on this ranch. Ain't nobody comin' through here unless they want trouble, and I promise they'll find plenty." His voice was rough but steady, a shield, not a threat. "I won't hurt you." Something in those words, maybe his tone, maybe the way he kept his hands at his sides, finally convinced her to breathe. Her shoulders slumped, trembling. "What's your name?" Cole asked. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. After a moment she whispered, "Leela." "Well, Leela, you picked the right barn to hide in the wrong storm." Lightning flashed. She flinched. Cole stood slowly. "You wait here." She panicked. "No, please don't go." He paused, that giant frame turning back toward her. "I'm just getting you a blanket." Then, after a beat, he added gently, "I ain't leaving you." Something fragile inside her loosened at those words. He returned with a thick wool blanket, draped it over her shoulders, and set a thermos of warm tea beside her. She sipped it with shaky hands, feeling heat return to her body. For a while they sat in the quiet barn, the storm outside, the lantern inside, and something unfamiliar settling between them. Safety. Calm. The kind of quiet only a lonely ranch deep in the plains could offer. But that peace didn't last long. A truck engine roared somewhere down the dirt road. Voices followed, several of them, angry, determined. Cole stiffened. Leela froze, eyes wide, whole body trembling. Cole picked up the lantern and blew it out, plunging the barn into darkness except for distant lightning. He leaned in close enough that she could feel the warmth from his breath. "They're common," he whispered, "but you listen to me carefully. They ain't talkin' you, not from my land." Her heart hammered in her chest. "They'll lie about me," she whispered. They think they own me." Cole's jaw tightened at that word, own. Something cold and furious flashed in his eyes. "Nobody owns you," he said in a low growl, "and I'll die before I let him hurt you." Footsteps approached the barn. Cole stood tall, towering, calm, unshakable. Lightning lit his figure like an old Western ghost. He turned back toward her. His voice was quiet but firm, like a man preparing for war. "Leela, if they ask who you are, you're my wife now." Her breath caught. She stared at him. "Why?" "Because men like that don't back off unless they think you belong to someone stronger than all of them put together. And lucky for you," he cracked his neck, stepping toward the barn door. "I am." The door slammed open. Several men barged in with flashlights, scanning the barn. Cole didn't flinch. "You boys lost?" he asked, voice dry as old whiskey. One man stepped forward. "We're looking for a girl. She stole something. Real troublemaker, you seen her." Cole hooked both thumbs into his belt. "Only woman on this ranch is my wife. She's asleep in the house." He nodded toward the darkness. "Far as I know, she ain't out running in the storm." "You sure?" another man asked, narrowing his eyes. Cole stepped forward. The barn seemed to shrink around him. "You calling me a liar?" Silence. Even the storm sounded quieter. The men shifted uncomfortably. Nobody challenged a cowboy built like a granite cliff. After a long moment, their leader spat on the ground. "Fine, but if she comes through here." "She won't," Cole cut in, voice ice. "And if you boys don't want to be buried under my land, you'd best get off it." The men backed out slowly, muttering among themselves, and finally their truck rumbled away down the road. When the sound faded, Cole exhaled. The tension left his shoulders. He shut the barn door, bolted it, and turned toward Leela. "You okay?" he asked softly. Her eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. Relief, gratitude, something like hope. They would have dragged me away," she whispered. "Why did you help me?" Cole removed his hat, running a hand through his messy dark hair. He suddenly looked younger, gentler. "'Cause no woman should be hunted," he said quietly, "and no man with a spine stands aside while it happens." He offered her his hand, not forceful, not demanding, just steady. "You hungry?" Her stomach growled loudly enough to answer for her. He chuckled softly. "Come on, I'll fix you something." In the warm light of his cabin, Leela ate slowly at first, still unsure if she deserved food, safety, kindness. Cole didn't ask questions, not then. He didn't pry into her pain. He simply gave her space, warmth, and silence. Much later, when she fell asleep on his couch, wrapped in a quilt that smelled like cedar and horses, he sat in his old chair across the room, watching the storm calm. He'd been alone for 5 long years, ever since losing his wife to illness. He thought his heart had died with her. But when he'd found Leela trembling in the barn, something old and buried had woken up again. Something protective, something alive. The next morning, sunlight warmed the plains. Birds returned. The air felt fresh, clean. Cole made breakfast quietly. Leela stepped into the kitchen wearing the blanket around her shoulders like a shawl. She looked less frightened now, still fragile, still tired, but safer. They ate together. He brought her a cup of coffee. Her hands brushed his for a moment, light, accidental, and he felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. After breakfast, Leela finally spoke. "I didn't steal anything," she whispered. "I was escaping," she swallowed hard, "from people who hurt women, who thought they owned them." Cole's jaw tightened again, but he didn't interrupt her. He let her speak her truth at her own pace. "When they realized I was leaving, they tried to take me back. I ran. I didn't know where I was going." She looked up at him, voice trembling. "I thought I was going to die in that storm." Cole reached out slowly and put a hand over hers. "You didn't," he said. "You made it to me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, almost ashamed. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." Cole looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes gentle, steady. "You ain't gotta repay me," he said softly. "Just stay here until you feel safe again. After that, you choose your life, free." His words were simple, but they broke something open inside her. No one had ever given her freedom. No one had ever asked what she wanted. She nodded slowly. "Safe sounds nice." A small smile tugged at Cole's mouth. "Good, then safe you'll be." Over the next days, she found little pieces of peace for the first time in years. She helped in the kitchen, brushed the horses, learned how to milk the cow. Cole watched her slowly transform from a terrified runaway into a gentle, smiling, hopeful young woman. And she watched him too, the lonely cowboy who carried grief quietly, who spoke softly, who treated her like someone worth protecting. Every night she slept without fear. Every morning she woke with gratitude. One evening, as the sun set behind the wide open plains, painting the sky orange and gold, Leela stood beside Cole on the porch. "You saved my life," she whispered. Cole looked straight ahead. "You saved mine too." She frowned slightly. "How?" "For the first time in years," he swallowed, "I don't feel alone." Leela's eyes softened. She shifted closer, her shoulder brushing his arm. He didn't move away. Slowly, carefully, she leaned her head against him. He let out a shaky breath, as if the simple touch meant more to him than he could explain. After a long silence, she whispered, "Cole, that night, in the barn when you said I was your wife, did you mean it only to protect me?" His breath caught. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see her eyes looking up into his. "Leela," he said quietly, "that night I said it to keep you safe." A pause. "But now, I don't know if my heart wishes it were only pretend." Her cheeks warmed. Her heartbeat stumbled. The wind carried the scent of hay and wildflowers. "I don't know either," she whispered. "But I know this, I don't want to leave." Cole turned fully toward her, lifting her chin gently with his hand. "You're free to choose," he said softly, "and whatever you choose, I'll stand by it." Tears welled in her eyes, not of pain, but of something she had long forgotten she could feel, hope. She reached for his hand. He held it like it was something precious. "I choose to stay," she whispered. Cole closed his eyes for a moment, just one moment, letting her words settle deep inside him like roots finding soil. When he opened them, there was a softness in his gaze she had never seen before. "Then stay," he murmured. The plains were quiet. The sky glowed. And for the first time in a long, bruised life, two broken souls, one runaway, one lonely cowboy, stood together, not as protector and protected, not as strangers thrown together by fate, but as two hearts finally finding home. And though neither spoke it aloud just yet, both knew. The night she hid in his barn didn't just save her. It saved him too.